Well, welcome back, everybody. It's been a terribly busy spring for me, and I mean that in a positive way. We've been going nuts with habitat work. It's basically chainsaw work, getting my CRP ground ready for re-enrollment. I had to put a couple bridges in this spring so I could access different parts of my farm. Combine that with some habitat walks I've been doing, and I've been slacking off on these YouTube videos. But I wanted to put together a video about planning the year's food plots. And for me, this has almost become second nature because I just kind of have a plan and a strategy that I've been doing for about, maybe 12 years now that I've owned my own land. So for me, the bulk of my life and my hunting experience up until 2012, putting in food plots, where I could put them, how big they could be, what I could put in them was never really entirely up to me because I was always hunting someone else's land, or the land I was hunting, the tillable acres were rented out, so I could only have, partial pieces of the tillable land or some corner where a planter couldn't get at. This is going back my entire life. But now since 2012, I've owned my own property. And in 2016, Amy and I bought a second property. So this is like a best case scenario if you have total control over your hunting property and what you can do there. This is what my recommendation is, and this is my strategy and kind of what I plan for every year. I got some notes here I want to go through. I want to make this as easy as I can, but I don't want to miss anything. The first thing I really want to start with is not to talk about food plots. So it seems like when it comes to habitat and deer hunting type stuff, food plots is what gets the lion's share of the publicity. That's what people enjoy doing. It's the fun stuff. Everybody likes their tractor time. That's where the money is in the hunting industry. So whether that's the food plot implements, the food plot seed, that's where the money is. That's where the focus goes. So I really never want to make a food plot video without first talking about, at least mentioning that the native habitat, the cover part of your farm, is more important than your food plots. So for me, it's a four-pronged strategy for creating the best property that I can. It's native habitat, so the cover, the woody browse, the security cover, that's one. Supplementing that with food plots, low pressure, and then creating space for bucks. The number one out of those is the native habitat, is your cover, your thick, your woody browse, your holding power. Without that, your food plots aren't really going to supplement anything. So I have to start with that. So years ago, like I said, I had to put small food plots all spread out on a farm because that's the only choice I had. So if I wanted to get 2 or 3 or 4 acres of food plots in, it was dictated to me where those food plots could be. And it was always based on where a tractor couldn't get in, or maybe some really rocky ground where a farmer wouldn't want to plant. And back then we planted a lot of like interior kill plots too, because that's really the only place we could do food plots. And I've gotten away from a lot of that. And my strategy now is to start with. So I want to start with my hunting strategy for any particular farm if I can. Again, this is best case scenario, with a large destination food plot. Maybe 2. It depends on how many people are going to be hunting over that destination food plot for like a late season or a gun hunt. So I'll start with that. 1 or 2 destination food plots, and it's going to have grains and greens. And grains is soybeans and corn. It can be both. It can be one or the other. It can be rotating back and forth. And then some kind of green. The green that I've actually gone to for all of my food plots, but even on the destination food plot, is winter rye and crimson clover. And you can add some radishes. You can add some turnips. But the winter rye and the crimson clover is like my staple. That's the backbone of that green food plot. I do want to mention, if there's a way you can put in alfalfa and have a farmer in the area bale it, keep the pH, close to 7, keep the fertility up. If you can pull off an alfalfa food plot as part of your destination food plot strategy, that's like number one. I've found nothing everywhere that I've hunted in the Midwest, everywhere, if you can establish and maintain an alfalfa food plot as part of a destination food plot, that's like number one. I don't do it anymore. I might try it again here this year, but because it's pretty tough to do. I don't have a way to cut it and bale it. Alfalfa is a lot more finicky, but it does die out with frost, and that's when your grains will take over. If you can't pull off alfalfa, that's fine. I'm very successful with the rye and the crimson clover. But that 1 or 2 destination food plot, large exterior food plot, 2 to 4 acres, and I plant that in a scenario where that's where I want the deer to end up for the evening feeding cycle. So I'll plan that strategy out based on all my native habitat, and that large exterior food plot is usually away from cover. I don't tuck that up next to the woods. It's usually out away from cover as much as I can. And that's where I want the deer to end up for their evening feeding cycle. So you have to take into account on your evening hunts, where do you have to park your vehicle or your ATV? Where's your access? Where are you coming in and out of your stands? Because the last thing you want to do is get down from your stand on an evening hunt and walk past, or have to walk past, that large exterior food plot, that destination plot. So you want to figure out where that is. I also like to set that large exterior food plot up in a scenario where I can hunt that late season with a gun, with a firearm. Now, I don't participate in the primary gun season for my area. I hunt the late muzzleloader. I don't hunt at all for the primary gun season. I'm not saying you can't. So I'm setting mine up really for a late season hunt. I'm setting that destination food plot up where I can set up a tower blind or a homemade box blind for a longer shot, 150, 200 yards or farther if it's a rifle area. And so that's my destination food plot. Greens and grains. And I'm going to give them that for the entire season through the primary gun season. I'm going to give them that. I'm not going to hunt it ever until the very late season when I'll start hunting that destination or that large exterior food plot. I've found that 2 to 4 acres is adequate for me. Sometimes, the majority of times, I'll have to electric fence in those soybeans and that corn to get it through the summer months. So I'll electric fence in that destination food plot, and then I'll take the fence down 2-3 weeks before I want to start hunting it, or I want to have that as an attraction throughout the fall, so then I'll take the electric fence down. But my goal is to get those grains to last through that late season. 2 to 4 acres is usually enough. If you have to start getting into 7, 8, 10 acres of corn and soybeans because they're getting destroyed, I have found, and this is just my opinion, that usually 2 things is happening. One, there's just probably too many deer in your area. It's just overpopulated if they're really hammering, 5, 6, 8, 10 acres of corn or beans. You can't get them to last like through December, let's say. Or your native habitat is just awful. If your native habitat is awful, your food plots are going to get a lot more pressure than they would under a better scenario when your native habitat is really prime, because they'll feed back in their bedding areas and then come out for that, the more nutritious stuff for their evening feeding cycle, but they're going to get, half or 60% of their food from the native browse and the green and stuff back in their cover. So 2 to 4 acres is usually enough for me. So I'll start the process with that destination large exterior food plot, 2 to 4 acres, might have to electric fence in, and then I'll move back, and now I'm closer to cover. So now I'm figuring out, here's my bedding area, destination food. How am I going to cut these deer off between bedding area and destination food? And one of the things I like using is a transition plot in between. And these transition plots are small. 1/10 of an acre, maybe just over 1/10 of an acre. They're usually a little bit longer and narrower, something I can shoot at during bow season. And I like to use transition food plots in conjunction with a ditch crossing or a fence jump or a timbered point, some other structure or scenario, if I can, that sets apart any other feeding location. And I'll put this transition area in combination with a mock scrape and a fence jump or a ditch crossing. So I'll have 2 or 3 or 4 kind of like attraction and structure type areas in one spot for a bow hunt. And then these transition area food plots, like I said, are small. They're always planted to green. And I want to plan these out where I can get perpendicular access into these spots, into these small transition areas. Everything is in front of me. Maybe that ditch crossing, fence jump, timbered point, food plots in front of me, mock scrape is out in front of me, and then off in the distance is my destination plot. So again, the destination plot is where I want them to be for their evening feeding cycle. This is like the salad bar. That's what I always describe it as. The transition plot is no more than a salad bar. You don't want these deer stopping and eating there for 2 hours. If they're stopping and eating there for 2 hours, my guess is your destination plot is probably not attractive enough, or it's seeing some hunting pressure or something's going on, or your transition food plot is just too nice. It's too good. And then you might want to back off on your fertility. Maybe you back off on your size. Maybe you get rid of it entirely. You don't want deer, doe and fawn groups hanging out on your transition plots for 2 hours, because eventually they're going to bust you if it's a bow hunting scenario. Eventually they're going to wander around, get downwind you, or they're going to spot you, and you're going to burn that spot out. So these transitions plots are not meant to feed deer. It's kind of the salad bar, pass-through plots as they're headed out to destination food. Get down from your evening hunt, head back to your vehicle, head back home, and you're going away. You're walking away from that destination food plot. The third scenario is your interior kill plot. And I used to plant more interior food plots, these kill plots, than I do today. Today I don't hardly ever use them. There's one interior, what I would say kill plot on our cabinet farm, and it just sets up perfect, so that one is still there. But interior kill plots are very aggressive. So if you have a ton of land, you start getting in 200, 300, 400 acres and more with limited amount of hunting pressure, meaning there's only maybe 1 or 2 hunters on there, you can use and implement kill plots, because you can afford to be a little more aggressive because you have more land and you're spread out and you can keep the pressure off these small kill plots. So under an ideal scenario, hey, we'd own 300-400 acres of land and we could implement some kill plots inside cover, inside the timber, and those seem to work okay in those scenarios. But for the vast majority of us, myself included, my game plan with my food plots is a destination plot out away from cover. I don't tuck these back in next to cover, where I want the deer to be for their evening feeding cycle. And then I'll supplement an already good spot, ditch crossing, fence jump, timbered point, something that's already getting deer to come through this area because of structure. And then I'll add a food plot just to slow them down, maybe a mock scrape. And that's what I would call a transition plot. All of my green food plots are planted in the same thing, all of them. And it's the backbone of my food plots, which is winter rye, crimson clover. You can substitute some of the winter rye with oats. If it's more of an archery early season stand, just be mindful that the oats will die after a heavy frost, a good hard frost. And I can put I have different videos. I'll maybe link a video to this one about the green food plots, about what rates I run that rye and that crimson clover. And like I said, you can add turnips or radishes or something like that, but you don't need to. I've had phenomenal success with nothing but winter rye, maybe some oats, and crimson clover. So that's been my food plot strategy since 2012, since I have had full control over my hunting grounds. First time in my life in 2012 owning land. And that's been a really good scenario for me, a really good solid approach. And I'm not saying it won't change, but it hasn't now since probably the last 8 years. Probably since 2016 for sure. I've really backed away from kill plots, and I really only focus on these transition food plots on the way out to destination food, leaving the destination food plot alone. I give them that until the late season. The last thing I want to mention is, can you have too much food on your property? And I think the answer is yes. I don't think you want to set up a scenario where you have, and I'm going to exaggerate here, let's say you have 120 acres. I don't think you want to have a scenario where you have a dozen transition food plots and 5 destination food plots, and you're looking at 15 acres. I think that's the wrong approach. So you really want, if you need more food, so let's start there. Let's say you really have convinced yourself you need more acreage. So your destination food you can't pull off with 2 acres or 3 acres, and you feel you need 10 acres of destination food. Which I would argue, if you're getting toward 10 acres of destination food on 120 acres, there might be something else going on there. But I still think you're better off having 10 acres in one spot, or maybe 2 5-acre spots where 2 different hunters can hunt during the late season with a gun, as opposed to having 5 2-acre destination plots, because you really want to set the stage for that bed to feed pattern, if you can, to one location. So now you know that the deer are going to want to be in this one location as opposed to 5 locations. Now, if you start getting more acres, 200, 300, 400 acres, then you can have more destination food plots, because you're hunting more land, you have more options. But for anything, 120, 160 acres and down, you really want to have 1 or 2 destination food plots, preferably 1 if you can get away with it. Just makes it easier in your mind, because you know that's where they're going. They're going to that, let's say, 4-acre destination plot, an acre of alfalfa, if you can pull it off, a couple acres of corn, a couple acres of beans. You know that's where they're going to want to go every night. It just makes it easier to try and pattern the deer as much as you can. And then with your transition plots, you're not going to want to have a dozen or 16 transition plots all over. I like to use transition plots to supplement areas that are already good. And if an area is already really good, let's say it's a phenomenal ditch crossing that I can get to through a cow pasture, go over a fence, get in my stand, there's a phenomenal ditch crossing right in front of me as they're headed out to destination food, I won't put a food plot there. You don't need to add food if it's already a good spot. Transition plots I use really if the ditch crossing or the fence jump or some kind of structure either doesn't exist, so I'm using that transition food plot as an attraction, or it's not as good as I want it to be, and I just want to add that little bit of an enhancement with that small amount of food, that salad bar, to that spot. But I think you can overdo it with food plots. So I just wanted to throw that little bit of information at the end there. Keep it simple. Use the least amount of small plots that you can to coax the deer within range. 1 or 2 destination food plots. If you have to, make them bigger. And I think that's a pretty good plan, pretty good strategy for success this fall.